So this video will cover something that is much heavier in nature in terms of the subject, I think, than normally what I cover. The title is How I Talaqed My Wife as a Muslim and the Pain It Caused Our Family. So this comes from Abdullah Sameer, who is an ex-Muslim and normally focus his time and effort in videos to paint Islam in a negative way. So I'm assuming here he would like to paint the issue of talaq or divorce, one type of divorce in Islam, to be a very negative thing. I'm assuming, of course. So we will see what he have to say, and from my perspective, I would like to see whether what he will share is actually from the Sharia, from Islamic teaching, or more from the cultural aspect or something else. So here you go.
In this video, I'm going to show you how Islam is such a badly designed system that a simple marital argument can turn into the end of your marriage.
Okay, so off the bat, he made the statement that he want to show how Islam system, the system of Islam, or referring to the Sharia itself, to be a bad thing, which leads to what happened in his life, I presume. So let's see whether that claim is substantiated.
Hi, I'm Abdullah Sameer. I'm going to share a very personal story with you. Islamic law allows you to permanently sever your relationship with your spouse. This is not something I was able to admit easily, and this caused me a lot of pain and guilt.
So he made a statement that Islam allows for divorce, basically. Is it exclusive for Islam? I mean, I'm assuming Christian does allow that. I'm assuming, I'm not well versed in that aspect of the teaching of Christianity. I know some religion do not accept for divorce. Once you are married, you are married for life, until someone died. I've heard of that for a certain religion. I will not say any specific religion here, but the way he mentioned it is as if allowing for divorce itself is a bad thing. Now I think he's a free thinker and atheist. I think from how he portrays himself so far that I have watched. What is it then in that worldview? Is it not allowed to have divorce, even if anything, or I'm not sure?
The Quran and Sunnah states that if you utter divorce to your wife 3 times, of course according to certain conditions and with waiting periods, she becomes haram, forbidden. She is no longer your wife. In our 11 years as a Muslim couple, I said divorce to my wife and took her back over 3 times.
Okay, this is on a specific, on that specific issues, in the sense that after you have, meaning after 3 times of talaq, you cannot re-enter into marriage, basically, right? Unless a very specific reason, which becomes very technical in this video, right? But if he actually have been doing talaq to his wife for 3 times in the marriage, then that indicates something else, personally, than the law itself, right? Meaning, if I'm not going to make an example here, but there are certain rules and regulation where if you make the same offense multiple times, something happen after that in terms of the rules and regulation. That is, meaning if you keep doing that, that indicates something on you rather than the law, right?
With years in between each occasion, it happened once, then some years it happened again, and then again finally. When it finally happened for the 3rd and final time, it was very guilt-inducing. I wasn't able to just walk away from her. I felt guilty, wondering if I was now committing adultery with my wife, thinking that the punishment for adultery in this life is so harsh. What about after I die? Islam is the only religion where you can end up in a situation wondering if you are committing adultery with your own wife. But you're just a bad Muslim. The reason I share this personal story is not to show you that we had conflicts. It's to show you how Islam, instead of helping, causes additional suffering for many couples. Muslims should never divorce, especially when angry, right? But it's an issue that happens far too often. Fatwa websites are littered with questions on what to do when you divorce your wife by accident and regret it.
Okay, I will not go into detail about the reality of the Ummah, of the Muslim, that for whatever reason this becomes such a norm where people accidentally talak, etc. Because those kind of words, because as a Muslim, as someone trying to live as a Muslim, brought up as a Muslim, we are very, very careful about these things. I'm not sure about a certain culture where they tend to go towards the extreme of saying things. I'm not sure if I'm just a Malay that we are very careful about these things. I'm not sure. But from my perspective, Muslims should be very careful of what they utter, what they say. And hence, when we discuss about zihar, etc., right, it is to teach Muslim not to even say that in the first place. It's not about you say it anyway and then the implication, you complain about the implication.
Even though it's considered haram to many, there's a whole industry of imams will perform halala marriage to get you back together. I wondered over and over again, would it be better to leave her despite having so many kids together and despite the fact that we still loved each other and wanted to work it out? I had crossed a metaphysical boundary by saying divorce 3 times, making our marriage magically void. The thing is, people will always be people.
Will he continue to say that people will always be people, and hence saying divorce? Because that's the thing that I'm not sure whether he implies that. Because just the even the notion of me saying something like that once is so far-fetched. I cannot imagine just because a certain argument you go there, unless you are, I don't know, because from my perspective, Islamic values means that you avoid those things.
You have to look at the underlying system. A flawed system, or in this case religion, will create suffering for those who follow it. Why we stayed together. We both didn't want to break up. I self-justified that I was really angry when I said talaq.
Okay, so it's up to whether you accept that, right? Because it is as if just because you're angry and you say that, that's the first problem here. The premise that that is somewhat a norm, that the religion then, because if you understand the religion as a package, even that shouldn't be a norm to begin with before we go into this discussion.
But who isn't? It doesn't usually happen under ideal conditions. The excuse of anger didn't satisfy me. Many fatwa sites said divorce is still binding, even uttered under anger. And the ones that said otherwise stated that you had to be at least at a certain level of anger, some saying you had to be practically insane. It wasn't cut and dry just how angry you had to be in order for it not to count. The thought of breaking up and destroying our entire life together over a few words uttered in a moment of haste was far too heavy a cost for me to swallow. Eventually, I decided to ignore my guilt and accept that we will stay together. I told myself, Allah knows this is better for the family and we are better off together for the sake of all involved. I made myself think that Allah wouldn't want us breaking up over this. But I wasn't sure. The law seemed clear enough, but it didn't make a lot of sense. It caused me a lot of confusion how Allah came up with such a strange rule like this. I heard scholars justify it by saying by saying things like, if you said it 3 times, it must mean you don't belong together. But that's ridiculous too. We still wanted to be together. Why would Allah do it like that? It makes the marriage far too fragile, far too dependent on the man's personality and mood.
Again, I'm not sure if in a certain culture it is actually normal that every time you get angry, you say the word divorce to your wife, and then, oh, okay, okay, I take that back, and then next day you get angry, divorce, divorce, divorce. I'm not sure if there's a culture like that. If there is, my first question is, why is that culture as such, not this, right? Because the way he portrayed, as if that should be considered normal, right? Because I know angry during argument can happen, does happen. I haven't had any personal experience, but I know in marriage that's quite common to argue with your wife, right? Alhamdulillah, fortunate for me, we don't have that much of a differences that trigger that thing, right? But anyway, I still cannot accept the notion that angry means saying divorce, because talak is not just a word that I'm angry, or I, don't talk to me, or it's not those words. It's actually, I divorce you. Nauzubillah. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying that the meaning of that word. So I still cannot accept that, because that premise is behind all of this discussion about this is normal, this is human behavior. Whenever we get angry, we divorce our wife. Hence, this law of Islam. So,
There is a strange exception to this rule that involves your wife getting married to another man, having intercourse, and then getting divorced by him before you can remarry her. This is discussed in detail in my essay, Divorce in Islam. A better way. A better divorce system would have a mandatory waiting period so that it's not rushed into or taken in haste. That is how it works in many Western countries. You need to be separated for 6 months before you can get a divorce. It gives you time to work out how life will be without each other or get back together. It was only when I left Islam that I was able to finally accept that my instincts of this rule making no sense were right. Because once I saw it was man-made, I could drop the cognitive dissonance and see Islam for what it was, a ridiculous and clumsily designed system of law that made no sense.
okay, so that was the video. So again, not sure what to take of this video, because yes, the discussion of marriage in Islam, that is quite an interesting, and I understand some of the discussion there, in terms of the technical aspect and the essence behind it, right? However, this premise of all of this video is problematic for me, unless you do accept that premise, right? That no, it's normal that I'm not sure the way he described for Western that deals with it, right? You have 6 months apart and then decide back again. So is it solving those things that every time they argue and divorce, and then 6 months, and then argue, divorce, 6 months? Is it what he meant? Meaning, is that what is implied? Because the way he described on one thing and then see the solution on another thing doesn't really match. So that's my view, at least for what he just shared, because he didn't try to he did say it about self-justify anger, hence divorce, but that we should discuss that. If any culture, if any Muslim culture, that is such a norm, I really want to know whether how come it is a norm when they practice Islam. Are they practicing Islam in terms of akhlaq, in terms of behavior and interaction with husband and wife, etc.? Because it doesn't make sense to for that to happen like that when you say every aspect of Islam is being practiced. So that's my view. Thank you for watching. See you next time.